with you. So you should be seeing my slides. Let me get this out of the way. There we go. So is everybody seeing it? Make sure we are. Great. I see nodding heads. So today we're going to talk about digital assets. And what I'm going to do is talk first about what are digital assets. Let's identify what those things are. Why do we need to get them in order? And then how do we go about it? So first of all, raise your hand if you know that you have digital assets. So most people have got their hand raised. We all do. You're using Zoom right now. That would technically, your login information, be a digital asset. Why do we need to worry about them? Well, there is going to come a time in your life when somebody is going to have to pick up the pieces. And that might be because you're ill, and it might be because you've passed away, but somebody is going to have to pick up the pieces. So that's one reason to get them in order. And then going about it can be really overwhelming. And so we'll talk about some good ways to do that. So first of all, let's talk about digital assets in general. I kind of lump them into 5 buckets. And there are some things on this list that you probably have not thought about. So first of all, let's think about what I refer to as benefit accounts. Where do you accumulate points that you can somehow redeem? You've got airline miles. You may have affinity points for things like Marriott Club. Or you may shop at Nordstrom and get Nordy points. I love when my Nordy check comes from my Nordy points. There are other kinds of businesses that you accumulate points, and many people don't realize those are an asset that can be transferred after you pass away. Airline miles can be passed on. So that's an asset you really need to think about. Most of us also have some kind of storage account. So think about your iCloud backup. Maybe you use Dropbox to store photos or share photos with other family members. Do you use Google Docs? Do you share documents that way? Do you have photo accounts? I have uploaded so many photos to places like Shutterfly and Snapfish to create books for grandmothers or for gifts. So those are all storage accounts that house important things, particularly the photos. So those are things that you need to think about how someone might access. Financial accounts are what most people think of when we talk about digital assets. So you've got banking accounts that you log into. You've got benefits accounts for your workplace. Often you have. You may have online gambling accounts where you have cash stored, or online trading accounts. There are some new ones, Robinhood and some others where you have cash accounts and that you can trade with, stock trading accounts. So those financial accounts are something you need to think of. Everyone probably on this list has social media accounts. Some of us still use America Online. I don't. But I guarantee you, I have an America Online account somewhere that I have absolutely no idea how to get into. So we've evolved through things like MySpace to Facebook to Instagram to Pinterest. So we have all these different accounts, Twitter, and those are all social media accounts. Finally, there are virtual currency accounts that have cash value. So maybe you dabble in Bitcoin, but if you play certain kinds of online games or online lives, those also have cash value. Things like Second Life, Farmville, World of Warcraft, you accumulate cash value in those accounts. So those are things you need to think about. So those are the sorts of things in those 5 buckets that you sort of need to account for as you're planning for your digital assets. Was anybody surprised by any of those things being classified as an asset? Did you already know about those things like airline miles? And yeah, I mean, sometimes it's a little surprising when you realize what has cash value. So why do we need to worry about them? Well, first of all, for your own protection. You know, if you get hacked, if someone, you know, if you open one of those emails with an attachment and you get malware on your computer and someone's going into your accounts, you need to be able to change passwords, to contact the providers and the platforms and deal with that so that it is protected. So, you know, even if you don't think about anything beyond that, your own personal protection is a really good reason to do that. Secondly, your power of attorney, your agent under your power of attorney needs to be able to help you if you need assistance. So I'm gonna assume every single person on this call has a financial durable power of attorney, because there are so many good lawyers in this group. So I'm sure that you all have one. And yes, I'm pausing for a dramatic effect there. If you don't, you absolutely should, because what can happen if you become suddenly ill, suddenly incapacitated, like, you know, you get T-boned by a truck and you're in the hospital for a period of time, somebody needs to pick up the pieces and run your life and pay the bills and make sure that your life insurance payment goes through and process your insurance, you know, reimbursements. So having those digital assets organized so that someone can step in and pick up the pieces for you is really critical. First, they need the tool, the power of attorney, and then they need the information to actually be able to effectively act on your behalf. Finally, you need to have this stuff in order for your family, because if that accident with getting T-boned by the truck results in you passing away, you know, your family is going to go to your house and they're going to say, okay, where are the bank accounts? Where, you know, who do we contact? You know, how do we know what to do? How do we know where to go? What's the code to the safe? So those are all things that you should have organized in some fashion for your family. I refer to that as leaving a trail of breadcrumbs. So how do I go about it? You know, we know now that we have all these digital assets and we know we need to do something about it. So what do you do? First, you want to make an inventory. As you know, my little bonus gift to you, we'll be sending out a PDF worksheet for you that organizes all of your digital accounts and usernames and passwords. The inventory worksheet, I would very strongly suggest that you store that in a home safe. As an estate planning attorney, part of what I work with on my clients is I talk to them about where are you keeping your documents and how will your family know where to get those. So I strongly recommend that you pick up an inexpensive home safe. You can get them at Walmart for probably $50 or $60. They have a keypad entry. They're fireproof and they're waterproof. Important documents should be there, and that's where this inventory should go. Make sure it's there. Secondly, think about secure password storage. So there are password managers that you can use that store your passwords for you so that you only need to remember one password. And those password managers, they can create passwords for you. So if you're required to change your password every so often, they will come up with random combinations of letters and numbers for passwords that are very, very secure. And then they store them in this digital vault so you don't have to remember, you know, how many times you have to change your password on something you don't use that often because you can't remember what the password was. Which combination did I use? How did I set that up? And we've kind of all learned that having repetitive passwords is a big no-no. So there are a few companies that do this. Dashlane happens to be the one that I use. 1Password and LastPass are also really good ones, and they allow family programs so that you can share password to the vault with your spouse, with your significant other, with your agent under the power of attorney. So that is really helpful. I would suggest to you also that most IT professionals would give you this advice. They would say, use a password manager that is secure. That way, you know, everything is there. Then leave a trail of breadcrumbs. Make sure that inventory sheet, with or without the passwords written on it, is around for your family to track down so that they can locate the family pictures you've stored on Dropbox. They know, you know, that you have a trading account with Ameritrade or some other Robinhood, some other account. They might not know that. So having that is really important. Beyond the asset accounts that have cash value, there are some other digital concerns that you should be concerned about. First is device logins. So, you know, if you pass away, how would someone get into your phone or your laptop or your Kindle or your tablet in order to maybe download your contact list so they knew who to call, who's in your Maj club that you need to call? How do we get a hold of them? You know, who's in the book club you've been in for 20 years that would want to know that you're very sick? So thinking about where is your information stored and how will people be able to get to it? So one of the things I mentioned that's in the previous slide is something called a dead man switch. And that term comes from the railroad industry. So if you had someone holding the gas or the steam on the engine, if they somehow fell dead, that would immediately trigger the brake so that the train would stop and it wouldn't just keep going uncontrolled. So dead man switches are something you can initiate in your account so that if they are inactive for a period of time, they go completely dead. And someone would have to have a two-factor authentication in order to restart them. So that might be useful for things like if you use Google Suite a lot and that account were to go inactive, your Gmail account wasn't used for some period of time or something else wasn't, then there would be a notification sent. And if there was no response, the account would be completely locked. The interesting thing about some of those dead man switches is you can set them to notify someone else so that if the account is inactive for a period of time, someone else is notified. Why might you want to do that? Well, if you live alone and you've been maintaining social distancing or what have you, you might want somebody to know if you haven't checked your email in a week, because that means something's wrong. So that is one way to let people know. The other thing that you can do with many, particularly social media accounts, is you can provide a designated successor to shut those accounts down. I don't know if any of you have experienced this, but after my father passed away, none of us had the ability to shut down his Facebook account at that time. So we kept getting notifications of stuff. Like, his memories would pop up, or his birthday would continue to pop up and things like that. And it was a little unnerving, to be honest with you. And I think finally Facebook allowed us, we had to go through a lot of hoops to get that shut down. But think about that. The other thing is that, and this kind of goes into the why a little bit, but if you passed away and your executor has not locked down your accounts, they are ripe for hacking. And hackers look for inactive accounts to break into and to access. So, because people are less likely to notice. So, and then they can access contacts and all that. So there's a really good reason to make sure someone is empowered to do it and then has the information. So I'm going to go back to the other digital concerns that I had kind of started on. And that is device logins, the emergency information. So where do you have stored security codes for your alarm, code for your house, if you have a home safe, who to contact and if you pass away, like who do they contact at the HR department for your life insurance policies? What kinds of things do you have on auto pay on your bank account? You know, you may have auto pay for Amazon Prime, for, you know, other cable, things that, you know, somebody would need to shut down. So that's important. Email accounts are something that people wouldn't think of as an asset necessarily, but somebody needs to be able to go in and change the password and lock those down so that you're not hacked. That's really important. And because you get important notifications by email, you know, whoever's managing your affairs, whether that's an agent while you're living or an executor after you pass, somebody needs to be able to do that. And finally, you have things like organization accounts that need to be deactivated. You know, you belong to the League of Women Voters, you belong to Win Cleveland. So those things would need to be shut down. So there's a lot to think about here. You know, kind of wrapping your arms around what you have, and then also, you know, identifying it and making sure there's a good trail of breadcrumbs. So I'm going to stop the screen share and ask if there's any questions.